Well, welcome back. We're live streaming again on the homepage of Poets and Quants. And I have to say, the excitement of starting Centre Court, the festival yesterday, and as it carries through to today, I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of alumni that were playing their interviews between each of these panels. And just there's this extraordinary energy and a sense of people that can do. And when I looked at who was joining us for today's panel, I had to smile because they're four wonderful individuals that I think embody that sense of energy and can do. And when you're the head of career services at one of Europe's top business schools, I think that's a really important characteristic for the sort of transformation that students are going through during their time. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Agnès Cognier-Loisereau. Agnès is the Global Director of Careers Development Centre, both, of course, for the full-time MBA students, and as we were saying, Agnès, for all of those 22-year-old kids that have just arrived for the newly launched Masters in Management in Fontainebleau. Also with us is Julia de Vargas Marquez. Julia is the MBA Career Development Centre Director at IMD in Lausanne. It's lovely to have you with us again, Julia. From Barcelona, and I think on the campus, Mike Mascarenas, who's an associate director at the IESE Business School, and sporting a very chic pair of spectacles. You don't have to tell us how much you paid for them, Margaret. Margaret O'Neill, who is the head of MBA Careers and Admissions at the Judge Business School at Cambridge. So the four of you, it's lovely to see you all again. I talk about this energy, of course. The class of 2020, they've emerged into a job market that was not what they were expecting. But you've sort of already shared this sense of how they themselves have come to terms with it and the determination that they face. Perhaps we can start just with a sort of a big picture of the market, both in the summer, all of those graduating students and the opportunities that they're pursuing, but also getting some sense of what the next class will be looking forward to, perhaps in a brighter 2021. So Margaret, if we can start with you, just looking at the last 3-4 months and offers to your graduates and where you see strong signs for next year.
Thank you. So yes, there's no denying it was tough in March when the pandemic hit. I think all of us were pretty hit with it. And we were just talking about how the students have really showed resolution and resolve in driving through and showing a real energy to commitment. So our students have only just finished. So they finished 2 weeks ago their course, and we've sent out our first batch of data destination stats. And we're seeing really quite decent uptake. We think we're probably about 10% back on where we were this time last year. So we think that offers will come in, but they'll come in more slowly, perhaps. We know that some companies are doing a wait and see approach, and they are just seeing what happens next. There's still a lot of uncertainty. The constant changes in the UK don't help, as you know. We're locked down, we're not locked down, we're up, we're down. But actually, there's still opportunities, particularly in public sector consulting, in edtech, biotech, e-tech, where a lot, about a third of our students go into those kind of sectors. A lot of, we about 100 recruiters or over 100 recruit from our MBA. So actually, they're finding the right niche roles for them. So we're still working with the current class, and we've committed to keep on working with them until, because of these unusual circumstances, for longer than we might normally. But we're seeing a lot of positivity in the market, and we're seeing them being resolute, and they're really good at their plan A, plan B, and plan C. And they're coming back and being very good at reflecting on what they've learned and understanding there's no one true version of yourself, and to hold on to your standards and who you are and what you're worth. And if it's not working, don't think I'm worth nothing. Think, how can I reposition myself so that others can see who I am? So we're doing a lot of work on that. And for the new class, we're really hoping that we can ride this wave and that things will be better this time next year. But we're doing a lot of work. We know that all of the applicants to all of our programs are smart, bright, independent people who are driven and successful. So we know that they've got the core skills, the core smarts to do well. And our job is to help them be the best version of themselves. So we're doing a lot of work with them on impact, presence, managing uncertainty, managing self-management and resilience skills, to make sure that they've got what they need to take them through to the next level. it's hard to predict what's going to happen next year. I don't think anyone's been right on this. The economics person has called it right. But we are seeing, we've got recruiters on campus, we're virtually on campus, we're getting the same number. No one's not coming. We've got some additional companies that are coming. We're doing a lot of alumni outreach and lots of niche roles that are coming. So we hope that it might be slower for the exiting class. We're hoping that we can pick up some speed with the class coming in now.
Now we have perspectives from all over Europe and of course the world with Agnès, with the global part of your job title, responsible both for Fontainebleau in France and Singapore in Southeast Asia, perhaps even the Abu Dhabi campus and activities. Margaret was talking about a UK market and those ups and downs. You're looking at several markets in the world. Are you seeing differences in terms of talent requirements in Asia versus Europe?
Well, yes, indeed, depending on the companies, the sectors and the size of the companies, if they are growing, if you look at scale-ups in particular, or whether some companies are developing more in new regions, adapting, diversifying as well. So of course, you can see different types of opportunities. When you look at one big organization, the needs would be different sometimes from Asia to Europe or Americas. So it could be more operational, more tactical, strategic in depending on the areas. But I totally echo what Margaret was saying in terms of students being able, so MBA students in our schools being able to adapt quickly. Of course, at the beginning, it was, all the change curve, right? So they were all a bit like, oh my God. And then thanks to the alumni community that we have and of course, the global outreach, we've been able to scan the market through the alumni. And we've been able not only to bring in businesses, thanks to all the online activities we've been doing, being able then to bring people from all over the world and even from big organizations. Then you can bring speakers from different business units, from different markets. So it's amazing. Finally, students realize that they get much more amazing insights finally through these presentations. So they become, of course, more, they became more positive, but it's also because thanks to this scanning exercise that we've done, we also then we were able to bring some new businesses, some new players, as Margaret was referring to as well, because during this crisis, we all know that some businesses have flourished, right? So of course, when now we look at the statistics that we are analyzing, compiling for the class that has graduated in early July, it's very interesting to see that where students have moved reflects what we can read for these businesses that are doing well these days. So students have joined a lot of tech-led businesses for sure. And it scans from healthcare, well-being, entertainment, of course, but also SIs for insurance, end-to-end process automation and digitization, no-code application platform for big organizations. So really lots of new applications that help the organization, the big organizations, to also run and deliver these transformations. So a lot of businesses that are of course developing great services for the big organizations. So still around payment processes, AI for customer satisfaction, so e-learning, gamification. But it's not only TED-led businesses, it's also within finance, private wealth, for instance. So lots of very interesting new niches that we can definitely help students connect with, thanks to the network as well. What's interesting to see as well is not only the change in the businesses, it's also in terms of functions. And we see a lot more of new roles that we were also reading, like future of work, but with regards to data management, for instance, but also like chief of staff. So I think what's important for us to help the new class as well manage this remaining uncertainty is to continue to indeed be able to connect with this network and then tap into these new businesses, but hear from the alumni as well. And they are very, very much open to have a lot of conversations with our current students. And we have launched just now a peer-to-peer advising and mentorship platform to help connect alumni and students. So it's just going to grow even further, this kind of support. But it's also us, career development centers, accompanying them in coping with this uncertainty, anxiety, and so on. And Margaret was also saying that it's important not only to work on their soft skills and helping crystallize the technical skills they learned during the program, it's also organizing resilience workshop and that kind of peer power type of workshop that also help them understand that they are not alone and indeed they can benefit from everyone. So
right.
pretty positive environment.
Yeah, you talk about some of those new roles. I think at the breakfast table, my kids will be teaching me about digital transformation. Certainly my daughter intends to become a chief of staff. It seems to be set. We were saying, Julia, in discussions that you've had with your colleagues, and in fact, you've actually sort of defined it and have a great phrase that captures this, the journey that they would arrive at IMD, the world was sort of on its feet and then everything gets turned upside down. And with that journey, how they're adapting. What was the discussion that you had with your colleagues?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say that exactly. For me, it's every year the MBAs know that they're going to spend 11 months here in Lausanne and it's going to be a transformational year, just like at any other school. But little did they know, did anybody know how transformational, what a different year it would be. And it's true that when we were discussing as a group, the phases that you go through, first is shock, then it's a little bit of blame. You don't know who to blame, but there's just why me, why us, why this year. A little bit of disappointment, or a lot of disappointment, anxiety, anger, and the different phases. And it's true that as we were going through that with the MBAs, we had discussions within our larger MBA team. And I really liked a logo or a slogan that one of my colleagues said. He said, how do we help them go from victim to victory? Because again, as we're going through this, we feel like victims. Why did this happen to us? Why? And it's okay to go through that motion and to feel that, but then after a while we have to move from that. And then how do we move to victory? Because at the end of the day, and I also, as I was speaking with another alum, he also made a good point. He said, this is something that the world is going through. This is a pandemic that the world is going through. So we are all playing in a level field. Everyone's going through it. So it's not like it happened at IMD, it happened in Lausanne, it happened in Switzerland, it's IMD, it's the world. And I think what I have seen personally is that it has bring the world really closer to each other. So as Agnes was saying, in terms of the alumni response has been just tremendous. We have over 500 alum that have reached out to us. How can we help? So we too, we did a survey in terms of where do you want to help? Where do you think you can help? And now we're able to, of course, the most difficult thing is for each MBA to figure out what is it that they want to do. And then we can almost take them by the hand and, connect them with an alum who will guide them, support them, help them in a certain sector, function, or geography. But the difficult part is you have to know that. And I think that one big change was that you come and you do your MBA and you think this is my plan A, plan B, plan C, perhaps. Now it's been really reshuffling that. Well, maybe I need to reshuffle what my plan A was. Maybe I need to reconsider that. And I think that's from the alumni part. The recruiters are being extremely, extremely helpful. We too have seen an increase across the sectors. We're still, usually we have company presentations in June and August, some in September. We've now gone into October. So now the month of October, we have 4 confirmed presentations, perhaps a 5th one. And the difference is that our MBAs only graduate in December. So it's true that the recruiters have had the time to be in shock themselves, to wait and see. And now they're at the point that I think, like all of us, we can't just wait and see. we have to react, we have to act. And so I think that's the benefit that our MBAs are having. And of course, it's difficult for us to convince them quickly of that. But I think we are fortunate that they're only graduating in December because again, we've seen increase across the sectors. We've had more interviews this September than last year. We've had more presentations. Exactly, the tech sector seems to, I mean, one tech company tripled the number of offers that they've made. Again, it just depends. But I think the recruiters have been extremely, I think everybody's just, you guys, everyone's like, how can we help? We want to help. You know, if I can help you, tell me if you can help me. And it's just, again, it's because it's touching all of us that I think it's had this impact. And also because it's health related. We're all going through it. And at the end of the day, it's, you know, that's what we say with the MBAs and our alum. As long as we're in good health, hey, let's just continue to go and move that, you know, go through that journey and get from the victim to the victory. So that's what we're seeing. And again, it's not always easy, huh? It's not always easy, but I think for us, it's remaining positive. I always say it's if you see the glass half full, your mindset is very different than if you see it half empty. And for me, I try to, and our team and our dean and our colleagues try to go about it that way, not to ignore, not to say I'm not seeing it, but okay, you know, exactly with the virtual presentations, it's been amazing because now there are companies that are saying, I can bring in my VPs, I can bring in my presidents to do an hour, you know, or 10-minute presentation. Whereas before, there is no way that we would have the access to these people to actually come all the way to IMD for that. So I think that's one reason why we're also seeing that increase. And again, it's not, and that's what we try to remind the MBAs. It's remember how, yes, we can say, remember how it was in January, February, but now look at what we're able to see, do, and accomplish now with the virtual. So for us, it's been very positive. There's things that there are events that next year, regardless of what happens, we will keep online in terms of for career development, because it's just the reach is much further and deeper than if we did it the physical way.
And I'd like to move to some of those virtual options as we discussed. So it's not one city or one region, it's a global challenge, and it's not just the students, you know, recruiters coming to terms with this as well. You know, Mike, that I'm struggling with certain political outcomes, and that leaves me only on the early stages of the process of grieving. But, you know, that what you saw in March, you were describing this positive thinking that Julia mentioned. And that sort of determination and looking for good outcomes, that's something that you've really seen among the IESE students too.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely echo the sentiments that a lot of my colleagues here have mentioned. I think here at IESE, we have a very globally minded student body, many of whom are looking to make big changes in their careers. Now, when the pandemic hit, a lot of offers were already out, such as the big consultancies, some of the big tech companies, finance, and those companies, you know, held to those offers. So for those people, there was no major effect other than maybe a slight delay in start date. The group of people that were affected, of course, were people that were looking for more industry-focused changes. And I have a story of one student about how she was able to really figure out her path, kind of for the middle step that Julia was mentioning. This student was a great profile. She came in, I remember meeting her on her first day, and she was very, very clear that she wanted to do internal strategy at an airline.
Right.
And I mean, she spent the entirety of her first year and a half researching, networking with airlines, writing independent studies with professors to do benchmarks of airlines. She did everything right. And of course, because most airlines don't have structured MBA recruitment processes, you do that recruitment direct to hire, which tends to happen if you graduate in May, it starts in March. So right as she's ready to just hit a home run, this happens. So of course, she went through some of those stages of grief. She was incredibly frustrated. But I think there's a sense of resilience amongst this batch of students that is maybe even stronger than some of the previous batches that I've worked with. What she did is she knew that she still wants to be in this sector, but she understood that she was not going to get a full-time salary job at the salary that she expects and demands at an airline in the middle of this crisis. So what she did is she actually became what in Spain we call an autónomo, which is an independent contractor. And she has started doing some kind of resolution planning for travel tech companies. And what ended up happening is she ended up joining one of those travel tech companies full-time. Maybe it's not the dream, but I do think that she is very happy where she ended up. She was very creative in how she was solving this crazy problem. And, I have no doubt that, in several years, this is going to be someone that is hugely successful in the travel and airline industry. It just wasn't going to happen immediately at the moment that she thought it would.
Sure.
I think maybe just echoing some of the other sentiments about the ESA, the way that we've adapted to this, I have always seen the education institution, the industry of education, as a relatively conservative industry. As an industry, we are sometimes slow to change, simply because we've been doing this for a long time, and we've had lots of great successful outcomes. So if it isn't broke, why are we fixing it? A lot of what we've had to do in these last months is adapt, make changes, try new things out, challenge processes that have been in place for years and years and years. And I actually see career services centers across, MBA programs coming out of this quite stronger. As some of the examples that my colleagues have mentioned, we have greater reach, we have stronger alumni engagement than we ever have before. And I manage consulting at ESA. I was saying before that, in the consulting career forum, typically the people that would come in person would be from London or from Spain or from Europe. And now what we're seeing is we see the Chinese wanting to have information sessions, and the Brazilians and the Mexicans and the Japanese. And having that global reach is something that is an unintended consequence of us having to try new things, which is, I think, really powerful. And I think the industry as a whole will have adapted probably at 5x the speed than what we normally would have done had we not faced this crisis. So I think we'll come out of it stronger, even if there have certainly been challenges.
Right. New ways for even greater global reach. Margaret, I've been in this industry so long, I almost feel like I was around for the Spanish influenza, let alone the latest pandemic. But it feels that this downturn is different. If you look at either the dot-com bubble burst in 2001, when the consultants stopped coming to campus, or 2009 when financial services, they just stopped hiring. But that's not what you're seeing. And you were talking within that ecosystem of the Silicon Fen in Cambridge, whether it's edtech or biotech, even within a sector, just technology itself, which has this tremendous appetite. They still want to engage. They don't want to interrupt this pipeline of talent.
Absolutely, and they need it. They need it. These people, our students in all of these programs are learning live. They're being forged in the furnace right now. They're learning new ways of adapting. They're showing career agility. They're showing critical thinking skills. We know that the technical skills they learn now will last 3 years, 5 years. It's all the other skills around it that will last them their lifetime. It's this lifelong career toolkit that we want to help them develop. And obviously they're going to need, we run courses on data, data analytics, digital science, digital marketing. These are all core, but we know this is to get them up to speed now. But what they really need to show is career agility. And funnily enough, we had an alumni panel just last week, and just as you were saying, we had alumni from all over the world. Some at 3 o'clock in the morning in Hong Kong, some in Australia. It was wonderful to share that experience with our new class. And they were asking them about, what is still lasting, what's really lasting you 10 years out, 5 years out. And it said, it's this, what did they call it? They called it muscle agility. You're training in learning fast, changing fast, keeping up to date with things, and the communication skills that you learn here, communicating with clarity and purpose so that you're understood, influencing so that in 10 years time, when you're bringing people with you, you're not doing the job, you're getting other people to do the job, you're persuading them, you're telling them the story, you're bringing them with you on your storytelling narrative. And it's those kind of skills that they're using, whether they're working in tech or consulting or industry. It's those skills that are going to last them longer than the direct tech skills. But we see all the time that people are really hungry for people who can have this real muscle agility and who can learn and pivot fast. and they've got evidence that they've done it. You know, they're not just saying I can, they're showing that they have. They've done their projects, they've shown how they've had to turn on a sixpence and re-deliver based on very unusual circumstances. So I think, you know, it has made them a much more compelling candidate than people of the past may have been, even, because they've got the stories to back them up.
So that sense of, you know, positive thinking, resilience, agility, and yes, you know, there are 1,020 INSEAD MBA students graduating, you know, out of the 2 class starts every year. How do you then prepare them? Whether, you know, the recruiters are recruiting virtually, they used to, you know, come onto the campus in big numbers, and what are some of those skill sets to make sure that, you know, an individual does come across in a compelling way on a Zoom interview that they might be doing? I mean, perhaps some of them have been doing this for a while, but they need to adapt, don't they?
Indeed, and so this is why we put them in the situation of learning very quickly how to engage virtually, because we deliver now what we call a pre-MBA program online course. So career core courses that we have transformed from in an amphi setting onto through the learning management system, so with a blended learning approach then. And so now students for the class that has just joined, and what we're going to do moving forward is to definitely bring all the relevant concepts and tools for how to develop, how to become a successful job seeker from A to Z, and learning all the main concepts from, of course, learning about themselves that they can do at their own pace through the usual tools, but then very quickly through the faculty members within the Career Development Center, trying to teach and educate them on how to work on their values, how to prove their values, how to communicate it, how to pitch, how to build relationships. And then within these building relationships, of course, so lots of different techniques, but then it means how to engage virtually as well. So they learn all this before they join the program now. So that's something we are going to maintain for sure, because we are realizing it, and we have clear evidences from the coaches who have already engaged with them before they arrive and just now at the beginning of the program, which is they seem to be definitely very much prepared. So it could be also because, as we were discussing all together before, they know what they are coming to. And so if now students have decided to do an MBA program under these current circumstances, they know that they will have to roll sleeves up and then take control, which is great, because that's what we always educate them about, right? So it's not only, as Margaret was saying, like learning how to find a post-MBA job. No. It's about being equipped and having a North Star so that you know where to head to, because that's what companies want to hear about, and how much this is going to be beneficial for your long-term career path, of course. And so all what they learn now is something that they would be able to apply at any point in time for the next transition. So this education role, I think, is something that we all embrace and have developed, and the tools definitely help us develop this further. So we definitely help them prepare very early on, so that then they can activate their relationship building and they can build their social capital. And they learn this a lot from the professors as well, how much the social capital is also very much important for doing your business, of course, and managing stakeholders, but it's also very much important for your own personal and professional growth, of course. So we try to leverage, and then in the continuity of the careers program that we deliver during the MBA program, we try to leverage what they hear from professors as well, and then be very complementary in terms of concrete practical workshops, let's say, as I was referring just before, peer power groups as well on very specific topics, bringing in alumni as advisors sometimes. But we believe that what is very important is that giving them access to this knowledge very early on then allows us and them to work together and partner together for what is the most important thing, which is to practice and perfect the pitch and the people to connect with and how and so on. And yeah, that's really what we have developed a lot. I mean, this change that we are trying to bring when we work with them. So the soft skills definitely are very much important because it's going to last, and the emotional intelligence, and that's also very much part of the mission we have as well, which is to have students become responsible leaders. And so being empathetic as well with their employees, with their workforce, definitely very important these days. But it's also with regards to the ethical approach of all the data that you have to deal and manage with, or the many different engagement that you have with different kind of stakeholders, public, private, and so on. So this compliance, security thing of data, ethical approach of how to manage this data, etc., it's also very much important. So they need to have this mindset of becoming responsible leaders in order to indeed handle this future of work that they can tap into.
When I ask INSEAD alumni to, a word that describes their experience, they often say intense, but they say it with a smile on their face. And of course, all of you, the amount that you fit into one, or in the case of IESE, a slightly longer time period, but it is an intense experience. And of course, that intensity, Julia, begins even as you apply to IMD, because you bring applicants, a filtered group of applicants onto the campus, or have different events, held with candidates from around the world. They're already sort of sharing what they might imagine as their post-MBA career goals. Now, if you map and look at what an applicant said in the application and the journey that they then have, the 12 months that they spend with you, and where, but this is one of the ideas, right? That even that first position coming out of the MBA is often a stepping stone to you helping them to define those longer term goals that will bring, real sense of purpose and value to them.
I think it's very interesting because, of course, they put something on their application, they say something during the admissions day, and then it could be something totally different. Now, for me, I always say when I meet with them, and when I meet with them personally as an advisor, I always say I'm more concerned with somebody that tells me I know exactly what I want to do, and it's this. Because for me, when you're doing your MBA, when you decide to leave your successful career to do an MBA, you're also doing it because you're curious, because you want to learn, because you want to change, because you want to transform. So for me, I say that that's perfectly okay. For me, what I ask them to do is to be curious, to dare. And in order to do that, you're going to be like a sponge. I tell them, you're going to have 89 classmates. Be curious, be willing to learn about different sectors, different functions, different locations, and you're working with your classmates, you're working with the professors, you're working with the coaches, with the union analysts. They have 20 hours. You're working with us. I would say it's normal that if you're curious, you're going to wander. Well, maybe, yeah, I thought I wanted to go in this direction. Maybe I changed completely. So it's something that for us, I think, and I also tell them, when else in your life are you going to be able to explore this? When else? So of course, I'm not saying just go all over the place, but if you feel, for me, what I tell them, if you feel there's a slight interest, pursue that interest. And then what I say is also, if when speaking with a classmate, when you have a professor or a guest speaker, and they're speaking about a sector or a company or a function, and you're like, oh no, that's definitely not for me. Also question why not, and what's behind that. So for me, that's also important. Just as important as knowing what you want is also important to know what you don't want, or what lies behind that. What is it that I don't want to, if I say, oh, he or she comes from that sector, I could never. Why not? and then that will help you in it. So for us, it's important to do that. And again, after a certain point, you need to be able to be focused. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last session we had, so excuse me if I repeat myself, but we had a guest speaker a couple of years ago from an MBA from 2001, and he spoke to a group of MBAs, and he told them, oh, probably when I was here, Juliet just didn't want to see me because I was exploring all different sectors. I was completely unfocused, and I told him, you were focused on being unfocused. Because you can be, because I knew that for every sector he was exploring, he was being focused. And he's like, actually, that does make sense, because I was focusing in different things, but it wasn't like slightly touching it. He made the commitment to explore, different sectors, but giving it the time and the energy, which meant weekends, what weekends, doing cover letters or research at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And so he smiled. He said, you're right. I was focused on being unfocused. And I think if we look at it that way, I sometimes mention to MBAs, and I said, don't get me wrong, I don't want you to go all over the place, but feel free to do that, because when else in your life are you going to have that? And I have experiences, stories of MBAs who say, my dream has always been to try this. When else are you going to try it? Try it. And then maybe you realize, again, sometimes we have these fixed ideas and we think this is the sector, or, oh, this would be my dream. And then you start learning more about it, and like, well, it's, we glamorize, sometimes we glamorize roles or functions or geographies. Explore that. Once we went on a trip to Asia, and one of our participants, she was really happy. She said at the end of it, she said, thank you for allowing me to come. I'm definitely not going to explore this part of the world. She said, I'm claustrophobic, and being in elevators in the high towers, for me, it was important to feel it, to live it. But now I know, and that's very different than, keeping it. Again, we can't explore everything, but do as much exploration as possible. And we're here to guide you along the way. I always say I don't have the answers, but I can share with you my experiences, what I've seen in the past, and maybe, bounce off ideas, brainstorm, and maybe ask those questions that you don't want to be asked, or you don't want to face. Again, one year we had an MBA that said, I can't go back home to her home country. And I said, okay, but you have to consider that. She said, no, I'm afraid I can't even consider it. And then I said, okay, well, for the weekend, that's your job. That's your homework. Deal with that. And she came back on Monday and she's like, actually, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. Just facing it, because again, sometimes we create this big monster, and at the end of the day, it's not that big, because I said, okay, nobody's telling you you have to go back home. But what would happen if you did go back home? If you were forced to go back home because you couldn't get an extension? And she came back on Monday and she said, wow, it's not that it's easy. It's not that, but now I face that. Now I can sleep. I can, panic a little bit and say, oh my God, but I can go to sleep because now I face that big. So for me, it's about that. It's about facing our fears.
It's an invaluable mirror that you're holding up to them. Yeah. Mike, you mentioned earlier, of course, that we're working in education, which isn't always the most nimble or the quickest to adapt, and yet all of us, we're at the heart of an industry, and you all speak to it, that is transformative. The journeys that they come in. So how does this magic work? Because applicants, they've heard about this particular strategy course, or something that they want to do looking at fintech, but then there's you and your teams that are the examples that Julia, Margaret, and IESE have been given to really challenge them and get them to think about this. And this tends to be what they remember, or skills that you're helping them to develop that 5 years later are still so. How does this magic work at IESE?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think Agnes mentioned this concept of the North Star. What is really guiding you? And I think where we begin on a career management journey is really exploring that. Some people, if I ask, what is your North Star goal for your 2 years or year and a half at IESE? And people will say, I want to be a consultant. And I ask why? What makes you want to be a consultant? Well, consulting is a lot of projects, and they haven't actually explored why they want to be a consultant. So at the beginning of our career services or career management journey is really trying to ask those questions, as Julia mentioned, around why your North Star is what you think it is. And I like to think that the reason so many people, what they write about in the admissions essay and what they end up doing changes is not because people were trying to say what the admissions officers wanted to hear. It's because that's truly what they believed in the moment. But through this process, they've discovered other things. I think that this concept of the North Star that we do continue to teach is often also looked at as, you know, it must be an industry, it must be a function, it must be a geography, and it doesn't. I've worked with plenty of students who have said, you know, my entire career thus far has been back office roles. I've been behind a computer. And my North Star goal is to really move more client-centric. Now, how do you learn how to do that? Well, you can meet with me and we can discuss that. You can reach out to alumni and you can hear their stories about how they were able to move to the more client side. You can attend company presentations, you can talk to professors, but the point is you have to do it. And I think that many of our students do go on this transformational journey, but they have to own that search. We provide you all of the guidelines, we provide you the path to go explore, we connect you with alumni, we provide you sessions, we bring companies to campus. But if you don't actively engage in that journey, if you don't choose to go on it, then you do miss out. I'm an alumni of IESE myself, and I often am asked, you know, how are your friends from your batch of IESE doing? Are they happy? And I say, for the most part, absolutely. But when I look at maybe the correlation between the competitiveness of the offer that that person signed and their happiness, I see no correlation. I know consultants that are absolutely happy and I know ones that are not. I know bankers in the same boat. The correlation that I do see very clearly amongst many generations of IESE students and alumni that I've worked with is the amount of time that they put into exploring their options and understanding if that was the right option for them and their happiness. Because there are many people that, you know, graduate from an MBA, an elite MBA institution with a great consulting offer, and then after 2 years, they're kind of back where they started. They have a great name on their CV, but they still don't know what they want to do, and they know it's not consulting. There are a lot of consultants that or a lot of people that have said, you know what, I want to really do a few years in consulting, develop my skill set, hopefully go from that generalist to specialist role in an industry, and then really try to start my own business. And maybe they get that challenge throughout the 2 years they spend here. Maybe they you know, struggle and maybe they change a little bit what they're looking to try to do. But ultimately, because they came up with a hypothesis, they tested it, and then they, you know, edited it while in the institution, it's given them a lot more success and, quite frankly, a lot more happiness afterwards. So I think just to answer your question finally, it's about putting yourself in the game. It's about allowing yourself to experience this, just like Julia was saying, and really taking chances and investing in the experience, because, you know, you're paying to be here. You should get as much out of it as you can.
Now, Margaret, there's a US president that many of us admire, you know, no names, who put to his nation the idea that the project that they were following, it's not because it was easy, it was because it was hard. Is there, with that wonderful Boston accent of his, the idea that, you know, for this class of 2020, will there almost be a badge of honor? And because they've had to work harder, you know, sometimes the rewards are then greater. Do you see that with candidates, the ones
Absolutely.
that it hasn't come easily?
I wrote down one of the things, what are the most important qualities that will help in this job search? One of the questions you're asking to consider, expect it to be hard, because that helps you just manage yourself. You know, a brand on your CV, INSEAD, IESE, IMD, that's just not enough. It's going to get your groundwork, but it's not enough. I loved the conversation just now, and I was just thinking when Mike was talking, I love an analogy as well about, have you heard about what the Finns do? They build desire paths of desire. So the urban planners don't build roads, they wait for the snow to fall and they see where people walk, and that's where the paths go, and they build the paths. So paths of desire. So I stretch this analogy. Some paths are really clearly signposted. So consulting, finance, you know what you've got to do, when you've got to do it, how you've got to be equipped, when the deadlines are, when the timelines are, who the companies are. That's the path. Lots of people choose those paths and say it in their applications because they know about it. It's clear, it's signalled. I haven't got to stray off the path. I can do that. But it might not be the right path, and it might not be the destination you should be on. But you're going for it because it's clear, and you're a bit scared to go off into the jungle that way where no one's been before. But actually, by the time some of you might be the right destination, but your path is blocked, you'll have to go round and make a pathway round. Others of them are going to be hacking their way through the jungle and finding their own path, and that might make them tougher and stronger. But they're going to come out much more resilient, and they're going to need a different set of tools and skills. So I always say our job is to help equip you for whatever path you're going on, but not to do the journey for you. And if you choose the direct, clear path, just as Mike said, you might find you get there, but all you've got is you've managed to walk. You haven't learned to swim, you haven't learned to drive, you haven't learned to make a rope swing, you haven't had to row yourself across a river, you haven't made all those other skills that you need as you're experimenting, as you said, Julia, that helps you get agile and fit for a much more long-term journey. So yes, it is hard, and there's going to be bumps along the way on your MBA as well. And you learn the most at the limits of your endurance. That's when you know what you're pulling on, the strengths you're learning. So you're fitter, stronger, and better at the end of a more exciting journey than just going straight down that path and then 2 years down the line thinking, oh, here I am, but everyone else seems to have gone off somewhere else and I'm by myself. And this path has now come to a dead end because no one's investing in this anymore. They've all gone over there, but I haven't got the skill set to get myself there. An overstretched analogy, but
I love the idea. Of course, we had a very warm summer. It's sort of disturbingly warm given current conditions. I'm just imagining in Cambridge in January in a very cold winter, and colleagues are looking out of the window saying, "What's Margaret doing with all the MBA students out in the snow?"
We're actually
doing their desire farm.
We're not allowed to walk on in summer. Yeah, when the snow falls, no one can see.
INSEAD has a very entrepreneurial culture beyond strategy and everything else that you're so good at. Many INSEAD graduates will pursue a startup project perhaps 5 or 10 years out of the program. As many as 50% is what I've read. Do you think, Agnes, that we will see a generation of entrepreneurs that are saying, you know what, given the current conditions, I'm going to seize this opportunity and I'm going to start that business that I was thinking about?
Yeah, indeed, I think so. It's interesting because as we were talking about the alumni outreach, that's another positive outcome of it, which was alumni bringing in projects, a lot of pro bono projects sometimes, and then a lot from the VCP industry where we have a lot of alumni as well. And it definitely gave a lot of opportunities to students, again, to practice and learn by doing, working on these part-time projects, either already in May, June, or over the summer, so as a short-term project. And so we're hearing from students, indeed, some very positive feedback of this experience because it helped broaden their scope as well and check assumptions, as Julia was also saying, and really understand finally, I saw that this industry was about, or this role was about, and no, I mean, being exposed to these specific market sometimes that I really didn't know anything about, but just because I wanted to work on this project because it comes from this great VC or whatever, this great alum that I know, and I was able to get exposed to something totally new, even learn a new function sometimes. So they really did a lot of these reality checks thanks to this project. So I think it was a very interesting opportunity for an important opportunity for them to also try things out and to take some risk and to change their mind and because they were able to try something. So it was reassuring as well that, okay, I'm trying something before figuring out. But this is where then we can already hear some very positive stories about students teaming up in order to indeed develop some new businesses. Of course, leveraging what we deliver with the boot camps and so on, that I guess we're all doing in the different schools. But I think this connection to the community and to some investors, business angels, PE, VC, etc., thanks to these pro bono projects, definitely triggered or helped them make the leap, at least in building something together. So maybe just an idea and they will come back on it later, but at least really trying, which is a bit new. And that's also very much reflected into what we have, thanks to some students and alumni still involved, established some years ago, which we call the Summer Startup Tour. And that was virtual this year, but so it's instead of doing an internship or summer project, it's creating some teams and then visiting incubators, VC players, investors, entrepreneurs, etc., in different hubs, and then trying to understand what it is being an entrepreneur, what it is being an investor, etc. And so it has also created some would-be entrepreneurs who maybe didn't think of going there at the very beginning. So again, the experience is very much what triggers the change.
I think, I suppose all of your schools are developing, all of your students could write a business plan to launch a business, but sometimes it can be one conversation with someone in PUVC. It can be one small project that then becomes a big project. I mean, this is that sense of potential. Julia, you have alumni from the school that 10 years later come back and share their adventures, and they distinctly remember the contact that they had with you, and whether they were chaotic in their non-chaos and structured in the unstructured. What do you love most about what you do?
I think for me, so it's my first class, and this dates me a lot. My first class was in 1998. So what I love, what I keep mentioning to people when they ask me, you're still doing that? And I said, yes, because for me, it's the human element. It's really, we're working, I think that if for the last 22 years I was working on just data or numbers or something like that, maybe I would be bored. But it's actually the working with people. So again, my two hats, it's working with the MBAs and working with the recruiters. And I always, now when I speak with MBAs about companies, I say, it's not companies, it's people in those companies. And you develop relationships, and you really develop relationships with the MBAs and then with the recruiters, with the people. And so for me, it's getting to know people as individuals and them getting to know me. And I think it's really nice. So in my background, I have pictures of babies, of birth announcements that alums send us. Alums send us birth announcements, wedding invitations, and it's really nice when you're actually, it's never a transaction. It's really, you're spending 11 months with people in this very, very important year of their lives. And I think that's why the connection with their class as a community, as a family, then extends to us. And I think for me, it's really that is, we value them, or we try to show them, because we really care about them as individuals. There is this thing about I'll fill out your survey, your placement survey. And it's like, it's not my placement survey, but I think we're able to convey, all of us, that if we're in this profession, it's because we love the interactions with human to human. And for me, I think it's really that I will always remember, and it's an MBA, an alum that doesn't know this, will never know this, but it's a recruiter that many, many years ago, after the interviews, we did a debriefing. And he was like, yeah, but, I don't think this person has it. I think he's still really, he's a bit too young. He's not experienced enough. For me, I had plans and I said, why don't you look at him as a rough diamond? You can help him. And then he said, never thought about it that way. And then I said, but because again, tell me what you like, tell me what what you didn't, but if it's but he's a little bit rough, raw, I said, okay, but diamonds, polished, and this MBA still is in that company. For me, it's personal pride. It's personal, and he never knew about it. And sometimes I see, and he's gotten promoted. He's, we do say hi, but there's no point in me saying, oh, but that's my personal satisfaction. I think is having the feeling that I played a tiny little, a little grain of salt, a little grain of sand, that I had that in somebody's life, and I think it's when we have this alum from 2001 who came back with his family, with his daughter, and he was telling his daughter about the conversations that we had. You realize it was really a person-to-person conversation. It wasn't transaction. It wasn't, what job do you want to get? How do we, it's not about that. And, for me, I think it's like parenting. I really relate to them I'm just so proud when I hear of them, of what the accomplishments, what they've done, the number of kids they've had, the weddings. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think at the end of the day, who doesn't like to be cared about, to be cared for, to be remembered as a person and not as, and for me now what I tell them is, forgive me. I remember faces and names, but the years I'm starting to confuse. Were you 98 or 99? But I think that if that's the worst, then that's okay, And
well, don't worry, because your story of the rough diamond, it's just the four of us, and I guess the 80,000 people that watch this panel back in April. We'll keep it to ourselves. Now, Mike, of course, you're an MBA. You took that leap of faith, that investment in yourself. These are uncertain times, and I guess our audience at Centre Court themselves are asking the question: is this the right step for me? If you were sitting down with anybody, thinking about that investment in themselves, what would your words be?
No, it's I believe that the MBA can be right for almost anyone looking for a big change in there. However, this is a major investment, both in terms of time and in terms of money. And it's important that you know what service you're going to get. I think that it's important to have conversations with admissions officers, but also maybe people that work in the careers team, and certainly current students, and hopefully also alumni. I think I'd probably speak for everyone on this panel that we all view our alumni base as kind of a family. Everybody is quite close, and people are willing to have conversations. Don't be scared to reach out to someone just because you think, I don't know if I should be talking to an alumni because, they might be really busy. I think doing your research, just like you might be doing your research when you're here on campus looking for a job, is very important. I think every business school is going to have a little bit of a different feel. Every business school is going to have a little bit of a different style. And, maybe just by going on the websites, you're not going to see that, because let's face it, we write similar things on our websites. But when you start to talk to people, you're going to get a sense of different cultures of different MBAs. And you're going to hopefully find one that really just clicks. I remember when I was in my own journey looking at programs, and when I stepped foot on the IESE campus, it clicked for me. And I hope that for everyone that's listening to this and everybody that's on thinking about this journey, that you really invest in understanding the differences between programs. Don't go on to the FT rankings and just say, I'm going to apply to the top 7 schools because these are the top schools. First of all, every school has different placements for different regions and different industries, and it's important that you read the employment reports to understand that, because rankings can be, misleading. But second of all, understanding the culture of these schools, going to NYU in the middle of New York City versus going to, IESE in Barcelona, the culture will be different just because of what is around that school. So really doing the investigating before you make the commitment, I think, is incredibly important. But if you do that, and you go in with a lot of understanding and knowledge, having talked to people and understanding the program, I absolutely think it's a good time. I think there's a lot of people right now that are confused and maybe hurting and looking for a major change. And I do think that MBAs provide you tremendous opportunity to really build and live that change. It's just, don't just say, any MBA will make me live that change, that is exactly what I want. No, do the research, understand what your options are and what the cultures are, and then jump in.
Right. You are all, you're 4 extraordinary ambassadors for your remarkable institutions, your families. Your family are very proud of you. I think I had more questions, but in the last 60 minutes, just having this conversation together, we've gone from North Stars, victim to victory. We've got liberty paths that are being planned out for when it starts to snow. Thank you, because I think those voices, your insights, that enthusiasm and energy, that conviction, you've seen these individuals, now you're seeing the children, we've got the photographs of the babies on the wall behind you, and that sense of family. What could be better than investing in yourselves to help you to achieve your dreams? And I think you really, really give a wonderful sense of that. So thank you for being with us at Centre Court. It's precious. You capture what we're trying to achieve here. I know that people will want to talk to you in the different sessions afterwards, and I will be looking through this transcript and using it for Forbes. Incredible insights. So, and yes, Margaret, Julia, Mike, thank you very much. Stay well, and look forward to seeing you at the next Centre Court.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Everybody. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Matt.